Hello and welcome everyone. We are here with our second ever AVS Spotlight, and I'm back though with someone who I've interviewed at some point on Infinite Layers that you may also remember. So I'm joined here today with Alton from Nuffle. Alton, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe give a quick introduction into the topic that we're going to be diving into?
Sure. I'm Alton, one of the founders of Nuffle. We founded Nuffle almost 6, 7 months ago, and before that, I was in Near Protocol, and really enjoyed my time there, and decided to become a builder. And EigenLayer was actually one of the interesting things that come up at that stage, where if you want to build something that is decentralized, but you don't want to build a blockchain, that was the first place to go. So we started with EigenLayer. Spin out a quick product that's running on testnet. And yeah, quite excited to be here and talking about Stake from Anywhere, which is something we've been working with EigenLayer about. I can give a brief introduction. How we're thinking about this is that we obviously have an AVS that allows you to do, that's what's called a fast finality layer, but essentially what it solves is a state sync problem that allows you to connect different blockchains. And some of the things that we saw over like being very close to the EigenLayer ecosystem and kind of working with a bunch of folks in there, that there are some assets that AVSs that want to use that is outside of Ethereum, and a bunch of AVSs are actually launching their tokens outside of Ethereum. And on the other side, for example, like for us coming from Near, we had a bunch of folks that had reached out to us and said, hey, can we actually get Near into your system? So we looked and we said, okay, this might actually be something interesting, where what if we can use our fast finality layer to build a product, what we call Stake from Anywhere? And been seeing a lot of sort of interest from the AVS community and anybody that's on L2s and L1s. So quite excited to talk about that.
Incredible. So before we dive into that specifically, do you want to talk about Nuffle as a product and what else you can do with Nuffle?
Yeah, so so there's a couple of things that's underneath, obviously, but I want to present this as kind of in the future as a vertical app. So we have our DA layer that uses Near. If you go top, we use a fast finality layer that takes the sequence and commits to it. And then eventually going up the stack, we will have a sort of a Stake from Anywhere front end that is going to go live around probably February or March, still pushing as we go through audits. But that is kind of the verticalized, almost like a DeFi app, really, right? Like Stake from Anywhere. But you can use the same infra for any DeFi on Ethereum, right? So the premise that we started with EigenLayer, obviously saying, hey, there are assets that are sitting outside Ethereum that want to contribute to EigenLayer, and there are AVSs that are interested in that side. Now you can extend this to like lend from anywhere, where you have assets sitting outside of Ethereum, you bring them to Morpho, which is a permissionless platform, or Curve or Balance or anything that's interesting, and you can earn yield on some of the assets that you sit outside of Ethereum, and it is sort of a nice yield, right? Because you obviously get the borrow and the lend side. So that's how we're thinking about this: is it becomes a platform where you can do DeFi from anywhere, and Stake from Anywhere is the first sort of vertical app that we're building on top of it.
So right now this is supported at the protocol level, but you're saying that you all are also building like an application that people will use in the future.
Yeah, it is a basic front end. I think I've shared one time that in my Twitter, where it's a quite nice front end that we have like furry stuff. You come there, you connect your wallet, and then you can stake any token from L2s and L1s. We have something coming on the 30th where we have a partner that is quite interested in one of the like biggest assets in crypto, interested in Stake from Anywhere. So we'll have a test, sort of a beta version that's launching on the 30th, but it doesn't have the full-on functionality that you will have with Wormhole and the other stuff, but it quite shows you like what we can do with the tech side. So yeah, quite excited about that, and it's in the AI field, so that excites a lot of folks. Yeah.
So I can essentially, so the basic idea is we'll have this application. I can go, I'm holding Solana, I'm holding like Optimism, I'm holding whatever I want to participate and earn yield as a staker. I can essentially stake onto EigenLayer using these other tokens as well.
Yeah. So the benefit here is, if you want to do this today on the L2s, there are some alternatives like Ethify that do this. We want to work with LRT, so it becomes like an LRT generator in the future. But rather than like, so let's say you're a near, you have near, you want to go to Ethereum, you need to take your near, you need to figure out how to bridge to Ethereum, take near, right, and then go to EigenLayer front end and do that. So it's kind of like 4 or 5 clicks for the user. Sometimes like the bridging process takes longer, like, for example, from Solana to ETH. So we want to kind of smush that process into maybe 1 click and just waiting and receiving and done, right? So that's kind of the vision, is to make it easier make the life of stakers easier for EigenLayer.
Very nice. Yeah, that's going to be huge. I think whenever it's ready. I think obviously like one of the biggest limitations around ETH L1 is obviously the gas fees and the UX really as well. So that's really cool. So I guess going into kind of like architecting and building something like this, other than Nuffle, I mean, you obviously are working with like bridges and things like that. Can you kind of talk about some of the other infrastructure that you were leveraging to kind of make something like this happen?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we're doing. So working with Wormhole, we're their main stake from anywhere provider. So any token that uses Wormhole can now be staked to EigenLayer, which is great. There's a lot of stuff coming under hood. Like bridges are very interesting as an AVS, right? Because they obviously have tokens, they emit tokens themselves, and they want to reward their users. So there's a lot of use cases that we might see in the future. So that's the main tech that we're using. And then we're excited to work with them because obviously Wormhole, even though they're a generalized message passing protocol, they've been early days in Solana. So Solana has a lot of access to this, right? Where you can get Wormhole from, let's say, Solana and stake it to Eigen. So that's the one technology that we're using. We're using our AVS for the logic that we're creating, so that we can actually get assets from Near, from Solana ourselves. And then we're using NearDA in the background as like somewhere to store information because it's pretty cheap. So that's kind of how the stack works. Is like our DA AVS, and then we have our like front end that you can come in and stake from there.
So sorry if this is a dumb question, but so you can stake Solana. Can you restake Solana through Nuffle?
Yeah. So you can take your pragmatic. So you can take, let's say, pragmatic Sol or any of these and restake them into EigenLayer. As long as there's somebody wants it, right? Like the beauty of, I guess, AVS is even though it's started on Ethereum, a lot of the things that we're building in the EigenLayer ecosystem is not limited to Ethereum, right? There's oracles, there's bridges, there's zk-TLS. Like there's a lot of technology that it's not just limited to Ethereum. So that was our thesis. Is like, look, like if let's say Opacity wants to contribute to any blockchain, we should be able to do that. And candidly, you should also be able to align with that protocol, right? So if you're a Solana user, if you really love, let's say, Redstone or any of these and want to contribute to these folks, as long as the AVSs allow, it should happen. So yeah, that was the thinking around it, and a lot of people like it, and some folks want to, for example, do L2 tokens, right? Like want to launch on L2s, and then want to utilize it there. So that works too. So it's a nice sort of a use case for us.
Very cool. You kind of hinted on AI for a little bit, and I know that this is slightly off topic here, but because it's such a big part of the narrative right now, and it really kind of affects everything, to be honest. I know you have a little bit of background already in AI. Do you want to kind of maybe touch on that, and then we can kind of talk about how it's affecting, not only the industry, but what you might be able to kind of like do to leverage some of the stuff that you've been building?
Yeah, I can give my background around that. So I did my master's in AI at Imperial College London. I'm actually in London right now. You have the background, which was I was quite liking that background. But I was pretty interested at the time for simulation. So I worked on deep neural networks, which is for images, not for language. But I was pretty interested in images, and I think the next after like LLM stuff that's happening, mapping the real world is quite interesting for robotics, right? That's kind of the next frontier. So I was always interested in that. So I knew how like LLMs work. I studied transformers back in the day, but was never interested in the language side. I'd never thought like the LLM side is gonna pass through like the CNN side. But that's kind of like how you spend. But anyway, leaving that aside, I'm pretty excited about AI. I think one of the things that we were so Frat, our CTO, has been one of the main contributors to ISKZ. He's done all the near work for there, and we'll we'll integrate some of our stack as well, like stake from anywhere stack, so that maybe agents can use it at some point. But there's been this trend called Def AI, and a lot of people got excited about wallets using AI and the other stuff. Like that's kind of the start. I think people start to kind of play with this stuff, But like I wouldn't trust it. Like I wouldn't trust an agent to be able to do.
Yeah, you wouldn't give an
swaps.
agent like $100,000 or something. You might give it $100, right? And just
yeah, give it to $100, and it's kind of interesting. Like I think that something will come out of there when obviously we solve the problem of hallucination. That is still a bit of a problem. Like when you're trying to do we tried to do like multi-chain swap using AISKZ with near intents, and it was like swapping some stupid things, right? Like you say sold to near, and it's like sold to USDC. So there's a lot of things to figure out there for builders. But what I'm really interested in is, you saw this craziness of creating AI tokens, and staking is one of the things that all the AI tokens miss, right? It's like, hey, like I'm creating this token, but what can you do there? How you can use staking as a primitive for these tokens? And some of those are, 500 million, 1 billion plus tokens, and really align with the community and using that sort of quote unquote like cryptoeconomic security to do something else is quite interesting for us. And this is something we're working on the 30th that we're launching with, right? So just the first kind of glimpse of what you can do there. Pretty excited. And I think I want to focus on more like what we can do with AI tokens rather than the Def AI stuff, because I think people will figure that out eventually.
Yeah, so you pronounced it in a way that I wasn't sure how this is pronounced. You said Def AI. I was wondering, like, what are the different pronunciations people are going to have? Because in my head, when I read it, it also sounds like DeFi. And when you say that, then there's no difference when you're kind of having a conversation about what's DeFi with the old DeFi and the new DeFi. So Def AI actually maybe makes more sense.
Yeah, I like agentic finance. Like those terms, like because it's agentic, right? Like I don't know why a community didn't take it and run with it, like agentic finance, agentic economy, because
I think it leaves out just the non-agentic stuff, because I feel like there's a lot of AI stuff that will be also non-agentic. I would say like more based on a user action or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so with all this AI stuff, and you were talking about the ELIZA framework and some of these agents, it is really, really exciting and interesting time, I think, for crypto. We have the regulatory environment changing, not only in the United States, but I think that's going to have repercussions around the world. You have the resurgence and interest, I think, in crypto. You have the AI stuff that's happening. We have all this infrastructure that's becoming, much better and enabling a lot more actual like fun applications. So I think it's just a fun time to be working in this space.
Yeah, fun time to be alive. That's we're seeing the technology in the most advanced phases, like as it happens, right? Like you have things that you can ask it some chatbot and like answers you in any way that you want, and you can actually tune it. Like that's fascinating, right? Like that's why I think the whole craziness about like thinking about what you can do here. And I think there's going to be a lot. Like I think we're at the start. We're going to see a lot of cool things happening in EigenLayer, happening in Near. I know from media as well. There's cool things that are happening, and I think that's going to be running crypto in the next like year or two as people explore other applications.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the things that you're excited about in terms of what you all will be shipping and sharing over the next few months?
Yeah, very excited about the vision that we're hopping into. So as I said before, I worked at Near, and Near is an amazing blockchain, but it was an alt VM. So it was really hard. And now that you know this, it's really hard for people to come in, learn the VM, like ship smart contracts at the time. So like the DeFi side of Near, even though it was great, like sharding technology, it didn't stick as much as like the Ethereum did, because Ethereum had EVM and had the networks effect of EVM, right? Like you have a bunch of Solidity smart contracts that you can deploy. So I'm pretty excited about these. If you look at the top 20, top 40 assets, and some of these underutilized assets, what I call it, I did some math around utilization rate, which is pretty simple math. You divide the TVL. I mean, TVL is not the greatest metric, but it is the greatest one we have, divided by the total market cap, and then try to see like XRP, XLM, all these assets that are sitting at like 0.04% versus like Ethereum is something around like 16 to 20%, right? So there's a huge gap. And as this stuff come in, like with US regulation easing, for XRP, XLM, I tend to see them like they're going to come to DeFi more. And it's going to take a lot of time for these sort of ecosystems to build stuff like Aave, stuff like Morpho, where Ethereum is really strong at. So I think we've identified a gap where we can take these assets using our infra and provide them into, just like what we did with EigenLayer, provide that to Morpho, for example, provide that to Curve, Balancer, all these interesting DeFi protocols where people can use these assets. And that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm working towards. And Stake from Anywhere is the first application of this. But as we develop that and as we prove that use case, I think I want to go to more like Lend from Anywhere. It could be like provide liquidity at perp DEX from anywhere. Like these things are super interesting, and a lot of DeFi protocols love it because they would want people to come and provide liquidity for their platforms. So that's what I'm working on for the year, and the team is quite excited about it.
Yeah, that seems like such a massive unlock. You have all of this liquidity and all of this, I would say, activity that's happening elsewhere, and just being able to kind of like bring it into some of these existing like products makes tons of sense. Yeah. And hopefully we'll like have even more like synergistic results within the entire industry as a whole. It seems it would be that way.
Yeah, and if you were optimistic for the future of crypto, right? I mean, if you look at 1980s, 1990s, when the world actually had a booming time, right? So the first thing that happened was globalization. I mean, I was in Turkey, so I grew up in Turkey. I saw how globalization, opening these local markets to the global markets, unlocked a lot for the Turkish population in 1990s and 2000s. So I expect the same effect to happen for these blockchains, right? Like if you get access to global markets, what I say, global DeFi for Ethereum and Solana, and you can use these assets, that's going to unlock a lot of innovation and interest, right? Because then people will come in to these blockchains and say, hey, we should probably build some alternative to this, right? Then it increases competition, which we know how economies are run and, are become effective. So quite excited about that. I think that's the next thing we'll see. Babylon started with this, obviously, with Bitcoin, and Lombard is taking that. And I think we're going to see that for other assets too in the next year or so.
So what do you think this means for EigenLayer being able to kind of potentially stake not only Solana, but XRP and XLM and these other things one day?
Yeah, it's a staking primitive, right? I think, and it's perfect, right? It's a global, I think Shuram used the word global POS or universal POS before. I think it's perfect, right? You don't need to run a blockchain. You can use these assets from anywhere. And let's say Stellar wants to use any of the oracles in the EigenLayer ecosystem. There's some big ones, right? And then they have their own EVM, let's say, and they would want to support that oracle with their security, right? Because if you're doing some actual work on the Stellar blockchain, then you would love it, right? You would love that actually your oracle is aligned with your token. So quite excited about that. I think EigenLayer becomes even more important because all the centralized infra that we're seeing, which is like bridges, because I said that before that I'm excited about it, oracles, RPCs, anything would be decentralized in that economy. The game theory tells me that people will use assets that are that are actually doing work for them, right?
Yeah, actually, it makes tons of sense. This has been really, really fun to talk to you and kind of learn about what you guys are doing. So thanks for your time today. If someone wants to kind of start keeping up with what these updates that are going to be coming in the future, but also what you can do right at this moment, what would you tell them to kind of go do?
For joined enough, yeah, obviously. So go to Twitter. Our Nuff Labs Twitter does a lot of the sort of posting about this. And I also post stuff from my personals as well. But really what they can do is, so we have a testnet coming up, hopefully in the March-ish. And if we can get the SDK, right, you can actually use this as the logic that I said, which is essentially, I want to build a lending platform, right? And then you can just use our SDK to allow that to happen. That's quite exciting, right? You can you can pretty much create a lending, like cross-chain lending platform on top of us. So look for those updates in the March time that'll allow actually open developers to use us, because as it currently stands, like the infra is very almost like specific to our use case, but we want to generalize that infra for more people to use it in March. So that's what we're working towards. But yeah, that's kind of the timeline we have for this one.
Nice. I definitely recommend to follow Altan on Twitter. He's a fun person to follow, and I think the Nuffle brand is actually a pretty fun brand to follow, actually, as well.
Okay.
So if you missed part of this, we have the full recording on YouTube, and we're going to drop links and everything like that as well if you want to kind of just go in one place. So that'll be up a little later today. So thank you, Altan, for your time today. Thank you, anyone watching, and we'll hopefully be back within a week with either another AVS Spotlight or another Infinite Layers.
Awesome. Thanks, Nader. Thanks, everybody.